Our first speaker on this important occasion has represented the 3rd District of Connecticut for the past 20 years. A member of the majority leadership in the House, Rosa DeLauro has taken a strong interest in human rights in Iran, and I'm very pleased to invite her to offer remarks. The Honorable Rosa DeLauro.
Good afternoon, and thank you. What a wonderful gathering. I can't tell you how proud I am to be here with all of you this evening. You do me honor by inviting me to be with you, and I thank you, Judy, for your introduction, and thank you for the work that you do and your talent and your expertise, and what a difference it makes to democracy around the globe. To the National Endowment. And to Carl, thank you. I want to say your support for democracy, for human rights, for civil liberties, and the rule of law around the world is so critical, and it's fundamental to what our nation should stand for and what we should be doing to press that edge of the envelope for democracy around the world. It's such important work. I applaud your leadership. I applaud your political and your humanitarian efforts, both in bestowing this Democracy Award and in so many other arenas. I want to say a thank you to our distinguished guests today, author and scholar Azar Nafisi, stateswoman and activist Manaz Afkami. You have been strong and unyielding advocates for women's rights in Iran and around the world, not only in word, but in deed, and by example. Your stories testify to the same courage, idealism, and perseverance that we pay tribute to in tonight's honorees. Manaz and I don't know you as well, and I don't know Azar that well, but we've had a chance to spend some time together and to have her in my home and to talking to members of Congress. A profound and provocative evening, which today has made a difference in how members of Congress understand and get some sense of the role of the women of Iran and how that has to be a part of our political discourse today. To Mohsen Namjoo, through music and poetry, you have shown anew that art transcends all borders. In blending traditional Persian rhythms with Western genres like blues and rock and roll, you have inspired lovers of the arts both within and outside Iran. And we thank you for sharing that music with us. I'm delighted to be with my colleague Ileana Ross-Leighton and to share this with you. As the organization is bipartisan, so too is our support and bipartisan for all of your efforts. It knows no partisan designation, what you are doing. Tonight's honorees are obviously not here with us. The millions of Iranians who stood up 1 year ago this weekend and demanded transparency from their election system and accountability from the Ahmadinejad government. It was remarkable and exhilarating to watch a spontaneous outpouring of protest that followed the June 12th election. In an instant, one of the world's great peoples rose up and rallied together for democracy, freedom, and civil rights that was their rightful inheritance. A year later, they are still rallying, even despite widespread incarceration, exile, and violence employed by the current regime. I am particularly heartened by the major role played by Iranian women in this tremendous upheaval. Women make up 63% of all college students in Iran. And they led, and they continue to lead the charge against government repression and discrimination. For example, Zahra Ranavard, the wife, partner, and equal of opposition leader Mir Hossein Mousavi, or, of course, Neda Agha Sultan, the young woman whose tragic murder galvanized last year's protests. In fact, the women of Iran have a long and a proud tradition of standing up for freedom and civil rights in their nation, a tradition that extends to before the 1979 revolution and encompasses many of our speakers tonight. In fact, women in Iran have enjoyed the right to vote since 1963, for almost 50 years, even longer than the women of Switzerland. And they have been at the forefront of the push for democracy and pluralism for decades. As Shirin Ebadi, the first Muslim woman to win the Nobel Prize, put it, and I quote, "With no leader or central office, the women's movement for 31 years has resided in every Iranian household that cares about human rights. The now famous Green Movement has emerged and modeled itself after this seemingly unstoppable force. And unstoppable it is. Much was made of the Green Revolution's use of social media, such as Twitter and Facebook, to spread the word to the outside world and to help to galvanize protest. And although these technologies remain a mystery to me, it was exciting to see 21st century communications tools used so imaginatively in service of fighting authoritarianism and expanding democracy. But to my mind, the movement for democracy in Iran's real strength was never new technology, but rather some of the oldest, most common passions on earth. The desire to be treated equally and with respect. The insistence on self-expression and self-determination. The democratic right to choose one's leaders in a fair and in an equitable manner without violence and coercion. These are basic human rights. They are the principles that undergird democracy. And I believe, just as water eventually and inevitably cuts through rock and flows into the sea, they will always eventually win the day against the forces of oppression and intolerance. It is only a matter of time, and time is on the people of Iran's side. The Iranian government was clearly on the wrong end of this historic battle. The millions of Iranian men and women who came out onto the streets last year were on the right side. I am proud to stand alongside them in solidarity and in sisterhood to the democratic cause. And I know that one day, in the not-too-distant future, the yearning for democracy, pluralism, and openness in Iran in the hearts of her people will be answered. Thank you. Thank you for including me in this wonderful evening.
Thank you so much for those wonderful and uplifting comments.